Is just to share with you a journey that we have traversed as the Media Alliance of Zimbabwe. Um, I think so that we do not go as far back to when IFA was enacted, to when the media, stakeholders made the resolve and the pushback against IFA in establishing a self-regulatory council, which is now very in place and operational, albeit outside uh, state media actors or public media actors. So I'll generally fast forward the process to 2018. Firstly, maybe to 2013, a critical development which happened in Constitution of Zimbabwe, which among the independent commission or the Chapter 12 commissions was the Media Commission, Zimbabwe Media Commission, which among its functions was a role number one to regulate the media, and if there is no code of conduct, that is the wording of the constitution, to enforce one, which in a way entrenched statutory regulation, which, as I said, at the enactment of IPA was something that the industry was opposed to, and the industry establishing the VMCZ. So in 2018, for the first time in the legislative agenda of Parliament, there have been obviously campaigns, conversations, MP somewhere along the lines, which also reaffirmed the industry's commitment to self-regulation and so forth. But in terms of the law making process itself, it was in 2018 that AIPA was put among the laws that were going to be reviewed insofar as the legislative agenda was concerned. And indeed, AIPA was then reviewed through the enactment of the Freedom of Information Act, and Comrade Lofty, Comrade Tabani were among those that attended the right show that took place in Nyanga, where they also contributed to the framing and wording of the Freedom of Information Act, and so forth. But there were sticking points in respect to media regulation, because IPA, if you remember, bundled freedom of information. It also dealt with the regulation issues as well as the right to privacy. So what the Freedom of Information Act then did was to deal with the components of access to information, but did not then deal with the issue of regulation, which we thought were going to be dealt with in terms of the Zimbabwe Media Commission Act. What then happened, because there was now a consensus to say, okay, let's have core regulation, to acknowledge that within the constitution we've got the Zimbabwe Media Commission, and we cannot really, run away from that constitutional reality, which is there. But at the very same time, there are opportunities drawn from the very same constitution, that the independent commission can delegate some of the functions, regulatory powers, That's one area, window of opportunity of delegation. And secondly, that the code of conduct that is already existing can only but be strengthened and can also be recognized and cut across the board beyond the current membership and constitution of the VMCZ. So there were discussions, consensus on co-regulation. However, we could not agree as to how that co-regulation would mean and what it would entail. And what then happened was the provisions that were going to deal with co-regulation. I remember it must have been at a meeting somewhere in Harare there, were then withdrawn from the Zimbabwe Media Commission Act, such that the Zimbabwe Media Commission Act dealt with operationalizing the Zimbabwe Media Commission, and the components and aspects of media regulation were still to be debated, to be engaged upon, and to be subject to further input from stakeholders. Fast forward, there was a draft media practitioners bill developed by the sector, which we went around the country seeking input, views, and so forth, and the sector put it up as a proposal. But there was also a counter bill to do with regulation that was presented by the ZMC, and both could not convince the executive enough to say they are the ones that can really deal with the regulation, of the media. But the principle of co-regulation remains the one that we were, consensus around, to say we have the self-regulatory body and an appellate body, being the ZMC, insofar as the regulation of the media sector was concerned. Cabinet then adopted the cabinet principles, but before the cabinet principles, we had held a meeting in Kadoma, which had maintained the agreement on a co-regulation to professionalize the sector, and there were some consensus to say we need one council. I think what was at the crux of the lack of consensus was there was a view that we need one council that enforces one code of conduct, but there was also a counter view to say we can have as many bodies regulate the media, so that it also extends beyond just looking at journalism and the news media, as it were. The commission in particular was saying bloggers, if they want to also have their own standards and want to lodge a code of conduct with the ZMC, they should do so. Journalists can do the same, and so forth. But there was the position and the viewpoint to say no, in terms of what IPA had sought to do, and in terms of what we are repealing, and in terms indeed of the persuasion around having one binding code of conduct. Because the fear is if we allow for that to happen, then we will have an entertainment journalist association creating its own council and lodging its code of conduct. Comrade Jabulo once said, within the entertainment journalists, you can then also have dancehall journalists, sungura, and so on, and which could then posit challenges and so forth. But the conversations are still ongoing, and we found it prudent as part of this ethics endeavor to feedback on where we are right now. What we know is the legislative agenda is also put in place the Zimbabwe Media Commission Act to be amended, and it also could be the window where this question of media regulation could be dealt with. But we need to already begin to start to position ourselves for that, and to converse and to build consensus around the form of regulation we want. So there, my bit was just to update where we are and possibly where the process could be going. Thank you, Madam Facility.
Thank you so much, my dear brother Nigel. Maybe let's hear from Mr. Lofty and just get a bit of background and where exactly are we now? Because we obviously heard about IPA, we also heard about EP and all the various differences that and people just questioning and querying what is going on with this particular regulation when it comes to us as the media. Where are we now?
Well, very far. Okay. Thank you, Zaza. I think Nigel has given context in terms of where the struggle has come from. He started in 2018. You could have started in 2000 or 2002. But there are critical things that have happened. Where are we? And the media we want, what needs to be refined. There was that aspect, what needs to be refined. The media struggle has been ongoing. And what is positive is that we've had reforms that have taken place. I think he spoke about the repeal of IPA, which is very positive in terms of a trajectory of change. Whether the change is incremental and positive or negative is something that can be debated on another day. But my take-off point is when you are making reforms and coming up with media laws, it's quite difficult to do that without a national media policy. We've been asking, if you ask anybody in terms of the lawmaking process, you need a policy for you to get a statute. You can't have it the other way around where you start with making laws and then coming up with a policy late. You have challenged the minister on that. Statutory making, you start with the policy, you go to start. Your media policy should inform what laws you have. It can also answer a lot of questions we've wanted to answer and to ask. The issue of co-regulation in terms of definition, I think, Nigel, you have been taking part in all the meetings. We have asked the ministry, we have asked everyone to say, can you define your co-regulation? No one wants to define it. Nobody wants to define it. There's a standard definition of co-regulation, which is standard globally. But when people come in, they want to have a Zimbabwean definition, which suits other needs. But I think what this does, it creates an opportunity for us to engage. We have had positions that have come up. Nigel has spoken about them. In terms of where we are, the issue of the One Council, the issue of a lot of questions that come about. When you talk to the Zimbabwe Media Council, there also the media, of course, the Media Council. When you talk to the Media Commission, or if you understand the basic operations of the Media Commission, they are a media commission. They do not specifically deal with the journalists on their own. Our situation is a bit peculiar from other countries. I know Zimbabweans are quick to go to the Kenya Media Council without maybe, first of all, appreciating how the Media Council of Kenya came about. The Media Council of Kenya was a transitional, if you go to their last clause of their act, it's a transitional body which transitioned from self-regulation to the core regulation. And the transition is clear, it's spelled out at the bottom on what is transitioning. But in our case, we have a statute, a constitutional body, which you can't avoid. I want to come back to the discussion we've had. You see, one of our challenges in the media, we've been having these discussions without defining position and looking at this. We've had a I don't know what of behavior, which we're now there, we're now running with this, we're not thinking anymore. But the basis of this co-regulation are the cabinet principles. What do they say? I've asked some of my colleagues, what do the cabinet principles say, which were approved? By the way, we're told they were going to be refined. They were never refined. The basis of the co-regulation reforms are going to be based on the cabinet principles, which were approved a year ago. They talk about delegating powers to ZMC to delegate. They are giving the go-ahead for ZMC to delegate, which is, by the way, constitutional. Again, it's there in the Constitution. The Act is now recognizing what the Constitution says, to delegate powers for co-regulation, and they talk about the many councils. What are we talking about when we want one council to regulate the media using one code of conduct? ZMC, when they're dealing with media, they are dealing with professional journalists. They are dealing with content creators, some professional, some non-professional. They are dealing with artists. They are dealing with filmmakers. They are dealing with a whole lot. People will talk about this. So we are therefore going to have a code of conduct which talks about professionalism and giving it to Gonyet to simply say, Gonyet, you are going to be bound by this code of conduct. Truthful, accurate reporting. People like Gonyet, enterprise of entertainment does not thrive on truthfulness. So how do you want to do that? The cabinet principles spoke about something. I think this is a way we need to reflect as colleagues. The cabinet principles wants each and every council and each and every entity to have its own. By the way, which is not different from our proposal in Kaloma. Our proposal then says we create another council, which becomes a problem because you have a constitutional body which is equal to a statute. You want to create another statutory body to report to another statutory body. It doesn't happen in the world. It doesn't. We need to really reflect on that and say what is feasible, what is not feasible. What would be wrong with professional journalists being the bottom line and ZMC being the appellant, content creators doing their own thing, and the ZMC being the opponent? There's nothing wrong with that. Why would we want to bring about people we don't know how they operate and say, we want you to be part of us, we want to use our code of conduct? So I think it's a reflection we need to know. And the issue of delegation of powers, I think the issue of co-regulation talks about the independence of bodies. Where is the independence of a body when another body comes in to set it up? So we need to answer all those questions. Where do we have control of this council, by the way, which is going to be statutory? And you are going to legislate a code of conduct. By the way, if you are going to bring a code of conduct before the law, we are legislating it. You talk to those who create the law. When you bring something, for every action, when there's a violation, there should be a sanction. And the sanction at law is very clear. You are now legislating the code of conduct. So those are challenges we need to talk about. You want to maintain your independence, how do you do that? You can't do that when you become statutory. So you can't have two statutory bodies, a constitutional body and a statutory body on that front. So it's something we need to do that. And I think on that basis, it's also quite important. I think the onus is on ZMC to lead a process where you have a stakeholder consensus and discuss these things. We have had this argument disregarding the role that the ZMC has. The ZMC does not deal with professional media. I think Mr. made it clear. You have a media jacket from ZMC and a press jacket, Mr. Nyarot. That is different from media. You cannot have other people who are not professional journalists wearing a press jacket. That's why anywhere in the world you have a press jacket and a media jacket. Media is everyone who works in media. But when it comes to press, you're talking about professional journalism. So I think these are some of the things that we need to do that. And I think there needs to be an engagement and a consensus in terms of working around these things. But one aspect of co-regulation is that it works to strengthen self-regulation. Remember the criticism of self-regulation. It has no teeth, it has no what, but in a co-regulatory framework, you got your limits. Where you want teeth, that's where the appellant body, such as the ZMC, comes in. Our situation is peculiar. We have a constitutional body which you cannot do away with. So these are some of the things that I wanted to bring to the fore. But what else did I want to talk about? The issue of one council and one code of conduct. Maybe colleagues can convince each other on how you can have one code of conduct for the media, not for professional channels, for the media. How are you going to effect one code of conduct? So these are some of the questions we need to ask. Because when you talk about media, let's be clear, there's professional media. And the professional media is the one which is articulated by professional journalists who are using professional code of conduct. And we have unprofessional media, which you cannot run away from. These are people who are using their gadgets and they are identifying themselves as media. There are other people who are media, some form of media, who are not journalists, who are not writing stories, talking about filmmakers who are giving us entertainment from scripts that are not true, from scripts that are fictional, which is the antithesis of journalism. So I think we need to really have that talk. I think the industry needs to talk in a manner where we are clear to each other in terms of or how we articulate this and ensure that we have good regulation. That is the pride of all the media in this country. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much there to Mr. Lofty Dube. Now we hand it over to our brother from the Zimbabwe Media Commission, Mr. Godwin Piri, our CEO from there. You've been hearing what Nigel and Lofty have been talking about in terms of the co-regulation in media. Maybe just briefly give us a background, your understanding of ZMC, the role of the ZMC, and the role in terms of the media regulation. What are we doing in terms of getting us there?
Okay, thank you very much, Madam. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And I'd like to thank the gentlemen that have spoken before me. I think they have captured the issues in a holistic manner and to be not very clear for me to try and add to what they have said. Maybe let me start by saying sometimes it is easy to emphasize differences when there's so much that we agree on. The fact that we've reached a point where we agree on co-regulation, for me and ZMC, that's a huge milestone, and we must celebrate that. What we're arguing over now are the mechanics, and if we've agreed on the principles, there was a time when perhaps there wasn't even that kind of agreement that we needed to co-regulate. The fact that today we're now saying how do we do it, for me, it's a huge step forward, and we must celebrate it. Now, having said that, I must emphasize that ZMC remains committed to co-regulation. We have not moved away from that position. We have no intention of moving away from that position. And we would like as quickly as possible that we find finality on these issues. And some of the issues that were being discussed earlier on really go to issues of how we're regulating ourselves, how are we holding each other account at sector level, and until we finalize those mechanics, it will continue to have issues of people saying the media is not being professional, there's no accountability, it's a boys' club where people just protect each other. So we need to bring finality to these critical issues. Let me say that I'm sure there's a reason why you are called Zimbabwe Media Commission and not Zimbabwe Journalist Commission. I think it's a recognition of the fact that our media is broad. The players are broad. They are playing different roles, and yet all of them are serving audiences, they are serving readership, and they need to be regulated. And as Zimbabwe Media Commission, we are committed to a framework, to the development of a framework that ensures that all media players have some point of regulation, they have some point of reference via a code that is applicable to their craft. The crafts, all of them contribute to media, yes, but they are different. And to then try and bring all those crafts under one umbrella might cause discord, which in effect might actually harm our attempts to regulate. We don't want a situation where courts or a court suits certain people and others feel that they're just being bundled up, but they don't really belong there. So we want people to associate, in a manner which enables them to come together and regulate. Having said that, you know, regulation issues, you don't want a situation where some people feel that they are big brothers, others are small brothers. Trained journalists naturally have gone to school for it. They've gone 3-4 years at university, college, so they have a certain ethical standard which somebody else who just picks their camera and shoots content might not want to ascribe to, because the level of scrutiny that comes with professional journalism might not apply to other people. So let's accept that our media space is diverse, and because it is diverse, the regulatory framework cannot be one size fits all. We want suitability. But let me also say that the Zimbabwe Media Commission has no appetite to organize the media. I think that one must be clear. We have no appetite to organize practitioners. All we can do is to facilitate processes through which the practitioners organize themselves and decide how they want to regulate themselves, and then ZMC plays its appellate role. We don't want a situation where we are being prescriptive, but we want people to, within the freedom of association and within the freedom of their professions, to be able to associate themselves and decide what codes are best applicable to them. They register them with the Zimbabwe Media Commission. Actually, maybe as you engage, they might decide they need one professional board. But it cannot be the job of the agency to say everybody going fall under that one board. It cannot. Finally, I think Lofty has spoken well on this. You can't have the same constitutional provision creating two bodies to do the same work. Thank you very much.
There we go. All right, please let's give them a round of applause, our panelists up here. I'm going to open up the floor for any questions before we move to the next session. Any questions in terms of rights? I need someone to run around for me with this microphone. Thank you. To my far right in the moment.
I think I will zero in on your presentation, Lofty, and to a certain extent touch on the commission. The question, who is a media practitioner? For me, that is very clear. We have the Retailers Association of Zimbabwe, and it's very clear who the retailers are, even though we have vendors on the streets. So to then say we cannot define what the media is because of anyone moving around with their mobile phone. And for us to then say, as the media, regulatory whatever body, we want to regulate the person moving around with their phone the same as a registered media house. I think that one is very apparent. Who is the professional? And that is what we are talking about today. Then the second thing, I think online content creators cannot be put together in the same umbrella as news publishers. Those are two totally divergent things. I don't know if it's just the digital platform that is making people think that a publisher and a content creator are the same thing. Because when you say content creator, it's like saying, why are college press not here? Because they're content creators. It's just that they do it in print for textbooks. That's exactly the same thing with your Gonyettis and everything. They're totally different ball game. I think let's just be very clear. Who are we? What are we talking about? And then we move on to the mechanics of, can photographers be expected to adhere to the same principles as someone who's producing text? You know, that sort of thing, that's what we need to worry about. But the definition of a media practitioner, for me, is not a challenge. Thank you.
All right, any other questions that we have on the floor? Would you like to comment on one thing?
I totally agree with you, Moni. Thank you.
But I just want to speak about issues of the media policy. I think it's one thing that is a commission that will be very worried about too. That because there's no clarity on media policy, it becomes even difficult to define issues of investment. How does it come in? What are the entry points? How to attract investment into the sector? You can't even measure GDP contribution of the media. So until we get to that level, it's difficult to even define ourselves as an industry because we can't even measure our own contribution. And some of you might have seen in the past week or so, the Zimbabwe Media Commission has released a call for consultancies. We're looking for some board or some people who can help us to develop a media status report, just to understand who is in the media now. What are we doing? What are they doing? What are the issues? What are the challenges? We hope that the findings of such a research will help us as we engage the ministry in terms of developing the actual media policy. We want it to be scientific, to be science-based or scientific, but we want it to be something that can meaningfully add to a media policy, which will help us grow the media industry. And maybe we should stop saying sector and start saying the media industry. Then we're then talking about an area that attracts investment, that attracts growth, where we can measure growth. We can talk about GDP and so on and so forth. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. My last perhaps intervention is as the Act, ZMC Act is being amended. One hopes that we continue journeying together, such that the mechanics, as has been discussed, can still be established together, so that we maintain the consensus. And once we will get there, I think in conversing and in coming up to say we agree that we need co-regulation, we step in the right direction. Just no surprises. Next thing, the law is amended and there's something else. But I see you nodding to say we'll be journeying together.
Thank you so much. We do have a question on the far left.
Thank you. I hope my question is not confused or sounded confused. Are we at the end of this session? And if we are, I wanted to ask that. So, what is the consensus? Because I keep hearing Nigel talking about, let's hope, our consensus will be reflected in the amendments that will be made into the ZMC Act. So, what is the consensus from the room in terms of the modalities for the co-regulatory framework? Or is it something that will be discussed at another time? Because I saw, is it Nigel between you, Nigel, and Loftu, who made a recommendation that perhaps the ZMC should convene an all stakeholders platform where this particular aspect can be discussed? Or are we going to wait? Are we parking the issue so that we can then discuss it after the media policy, considering some of the submissions you made on the importance of the policy, then defining how we go on? Thanks.
No, you've answered and responded to your question. In that you said the ZMC, because they are the ones with the powers to delegate. So it falls within their purview. No one else, not the ministry, not whoever. It is the ZMC which is delegating. So as was said, it is the one now that will convene that particular convention to discuss the mechanics. But we remain with the consensus that we are going and moving towards co-regulation.
Right. Any last questions before we move on to the before my brothers faint at the top here? Wonderful. All right. Yes. Okay, yes, Monica. Before I get killed, you're making people sweat buckets here on the stage.
I just want to ask Mr. Piri, did you see the photo that was circulating of a vendor wearing the commission jackets? Has anything been done to identify the irresponsible member of the fourth estate who owns that jacket? Thank you.
Well, the assumption is that it's not a strategy journalist who part-time sells on the street.
Yeah.
I'm sure SG from one will say some of my members are now struggling so much. They are also supplementing.
Yeah.
But really, yes, it was an issue for us, and we have decided that in future what we're going to do is each jacket will have a serial number, so that we then follow up who did we issue it to, is it being used appropriately. But also the question was, how much resources do you want to spend chasing after that one guy?
Yeah.
We have distributed 4,000 that have been properly used. So
Okay, the very last one. Then we have to get into the next session. Yes, thank you.
It's not a question, it's just an addition to the executive secretary to say that one of the things we agreed with police and political parties during engagement is that we needed to be identified with those jackets. And now if they're being worn by vendors, it creates problems in future where the parties or police can start telling us that there's no way of identifying if these are really journalists. So I don't know what can be done to stop it before it undermines all the good work that's been done so far.
Absolutely. I think it returns us back to that question of who are the real professional journalists at the end of the day. All right. Please allow me just to ask my very esteemed panel here on stage to be joined. We're going to do now the official launch of the research. I know they wanted to run away, not so fast. I'm hoping my camera crew and guys are ready to take the pictures. Please allow me to invite onto the stage, or maybe just, I don't know if you want to be, maybe we'll just push it and then you guys can stand in the front. Please allow me to invite our lead researchers for this particular report, and that is Mlondolo Zimbabwe and Lazarus Sauti. Please let's give them a round of applause as they come through. We just want to do the official launch of the report. Please, can I also invite Assistant Commissioner Paul Nyati to come and join us? So I'm seeing something very interesting about this stage. There's too many gentlemen. I think I need to be in this picture. Just to break. Hey, being over, hey. Yeah. Ne. Good enough.
I could have shame.
We just need a bit of color.
Yeah, you can squeeze in 3 more female journalists there. It just balances it out.
Madam Monica, please come and join us. All of a sudden it became a Ndlovu affair. I think as elephants we just like to take over, isn't it?
Still has no balance.
May I also just invite my big brother, Swat. Yeah, where am Swat? He was. Yes. Oh, yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. The report report has officially been launched. All right. At this juncture, please allow me to. Okay, now, where's my paperwork? There we go. All right. Please allow me to call upon once again back to the stage Mr. Lofty to come and give us our resolutions, actionable recommendations, and the way forward.
Thank you. We are not going to go resolution by resolution. I think during the course of our discussions, they were being captured. What they'll be doing, the recommendations will be consolidated and they'll be shared with the stakeholders. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much. As we get to the end of our program, please allow me to call upon from IMS, Programs Manager and Team Leader Sibiso Marimbe, to please come through. Let's give Sibiso a round of applause. Joining us here as well from FNF, Programs Manager Fungisai Stole. Please let's give Fungisai a round of applause. And from MISA, Advocacy Officer Malvin Mukodo, as they give us our closing remarks. Let's give them a round of applause to encourage them as they come on stage. Wonderful. Okay, I'm not too sure who left their diary in case they may need it. Oh, fantastic. Yes. Okay, who's missing from A? Oh, all right. Fantastic. Okay. Maybe let me start with you, madam, if you may begin. Oh, you want to? Oh, really? Okay. Apparently, we'll start with Marvin. Marvin.
Okay, my role was to just give the closing remarks, just to extend gratitude to VMCZ for the research they undertook to determine the state of professionalism within our media space. I think that's a very defining moment because many of the interventions we've been trying to do have also zoned in on how professional our media is. I remember when we engaged political parties seeking their guarantees for the safety of our media, they also then asked us to also give our commitments about the professionalism and whether our journalists will be ethical. So this research is very timely. It will provide a baseline for our interventions where we'll be able to then engage different stakeholders and tell them that we know about the state of our space and that we are actually doing something about it. So I would like to applaud them for doing that, and also just to lend our support is MISA for eventual self-regulation of our media, but for now co-regulation that we've agreed to. We hope that the policymakers who are here will speedily come up with a draft law that will respond to that. We understand that the Zimbabwe Media Commission Act will be amended, and we also hope that it will talk to those issues. So thank you very much for this engagement, for this platform to flesh out those things, and I hope it's a platform that will strengthen our resolve for co-regulation of the media, and it will provide the way forward as we continue to professionalize our space and to promote ethics in the media. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Earlier on, I think I was challenging the minister in my capacity as a Zimbabwean journalist. But I have a statement to read from International Media Support, which I am also representing here, and who are supporting media across the world in over 40 countries across the 4 continents. It is quite refreshing to spend the day here spotlighting media ethics. I think a lot of the meetings that we have sometimes are, pointing out at other stakeholders, but I think this is really introspective. We are looking at ourselves, our own conduct, and saying, are we doing the right thing? What is really affecting us, and how can we correct this? Media ethics are at the center of the journalism profession, which is also at the core of International Media Support's vision. IMS envisions peaceful, stable, and democratic societies sustained, supported, and promoted through strong and effective public interest media. This vision has never been as relevant during the organization's 20-year history as it is today. The foundations of IMS work are international human rights standards and the principles of ethical journalism, which also prescribe the role of proactive, civic-minded media that IMS is looking to support. Such a role is necessary if public interest media are to gain, develop, and maintain the trust of their audiences through creative forms of engagement that are now essential for media's long-term viability. For IMS, ethics are a trust issue, and I think this has been thoroughly discussed here. From today's discussions, I can only concur with several speakers and with the study findings presented here that they are even more precious, threatening ethical journalism in Zimbabwe and across the world. The wave of digitalization of our media spaces has brought with it a layer of ethical dilemmas, including incessant information disorders, misinformation, disinformation, and such like. This has been exacerbated by the contextual challenges also mentioned in this report and in the preceding discussions. However, IMS would like to express its solidarity to the media sector in Zimbabwe in combating these threats and defending ethical public interest journalism. IMS is supporting public interest content that is inclusive and diverse, and this includes the gender discussions that we had here. And I would like to remind us that the VMCZ Code of Conduct is actually gender mainstreamed. At some point, they stopped and reflected and realized that it was devoid of such. And if you are reading it, it is gender mainstreamed. Public interest media can be commercial, public service, or community media and can operate online as broadcasters and through print or other channels. IMS work does not merely benefit individuals who self-identify or professionally trained as journalists, but a wider group of people who work in media content production, including photographers, video film producers, bloggers, developers, social media professionals, and a wide range of other creative individuals, if they subscribe to ethical standards. I totally concur with the position of the study that journalism ethics have evolved over time, and we now need to encompass a host of other forms that are arising. Last night, I think we were talking about citizen journalists, and my editor here, Ms. Nyarota, vehemently said that we could only call them para-journalists rather than journalists. I would like to quote the report that says, the VMCZ report, which says the rapid advancements in digital technology have significantly transformed the landscape of journalism, presenting both opportunities and challenges to journalistic practices and ethical standards. Nonetheless, adherence to journalism ethics ensure integrity and credibility of the profession. If a profession has no code of conduct, then it is not regarded as a profession. I could not put it any way better than what this report says. And as such, I would like to commit our solidarity support to this work, to the defense of ethical journalism in Zimbabwe, despite the challenges. I think there was inference to other professions here that if doctors were to say, you know, we are incapacitated and therefore we throw all caution to the wind, what would happen to the sick? If lawyers could do the same, of course, there are unethical experiences in the lawyer's profession as well. But if they were to do the same, then we would not even talk about courts. And therefore, I think in as much as we have identified these challenges, be they political, commercial, economical, I think let's strive to defend the integrity and credibility of this profession. To my Christian friends, I would like to quote Proverbs 25, verse 28 of the King James Version. It says that he that has no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down without walls. I thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me thank in a very special way from IMS, the programs manager and team leader Simbiso Marimbe, as well as from NISA Advocacy Officer Malvin Kudu. Thank you so much. Let's give them a round of applause as they return to their seats. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our program, and this has been an amazing day of a great resource in Daba. As we got to speak a lot about the media ethics this whole day. Please allow me to thank once again in a very special way our sponsors and partners who've made it absolutely